Welcome to our deep dive, where we'll be exploring the power of stillness. We've got a fascinating mix of sources for you today. Ryan Holiday's Stillness is the Key, and daily readings from the Daily Stoic. So we'll be jumping between philosophical insights, historical anecdotes, and a bit of ancient Stoic wisdom.
It's remarkable how this concept of stillness, pops up in such diverse contexts and how relevant it remains even today.
Exactly, and that's what we're hoping to uncover in this deep dive. How can you, the listener, tap into this power of stillness amidst all the craziness of modern life? What doors can it unlock? Holiday argues that stillness is the key to, well, pretty much everything, but what exactly does that mean?
One of the first hurdles to overcome is that stillness isn't just about, sitting quietly in a room.
Mm.
It's not about physical inactivity. It's more about cultivating a deep inner awareness and clarity of mind.
So it's about tuning out the external noise to better hear our own inner voice,
Yeah.
right?
Precisely. And Holiday makes it clear that this isn't some esoteric practice reserved just for monks or philosophers. He argues it's an attainable path to excellence and happiness for anyone, regardless of their background or profession.
He illustrates this with a great example from the Civil War. Imagine this, the pressure is on Lincoln to make a decisive move against the Confederacy. Generals are urging him to attack Richmond or New Orleans, major cities that seem like obvious targets. But Lincoln, who actually spent hours studying military strategy, sees a different path.
It's fascinating how Lincoln wasn't just a passive consumer of information. He actively sought knowledge, immersed himself in military texts from the Library of Congress to really understand the intricacies of warfare.
Talk about a dedicated learner. So back to that tense scene. Imagine maps spread across the table, advisors buzzing around. And instead of pointing to those major cities, Lincoln focuses on Vicksburg, Mississippi.
Now, Vicksburg wasn't just a random dot on the map. It held immense strategic importance. Whoever controlled Vicksburg essentially controlled the Mississippi River, which was the lifeline for supplying Confederate armies and plantations.
But it was also deep in enemy territory. Heavily fortified, a risky target. So why Vicksburg? This is where Lincoln's stillness, his ability to step back from the immediate pressures and analyze the situation with a clear mind, comes into play. He recognized that capturing Vicksburg would be a decisive blow to the Confederacy, even if it wasn't the most obvious or glorious move.
And history proves him right. Taking Vicksburg proved to be a turning point in the war. What's fascinating is that many others had access to the same information about Vicksburg's importance. But Lincoln's stillness enabled him to see the strategic advantage that others missed. He wasn't swayed by the pressure for a flashing victory. He was focused on the subtler yet more impactful strategic play.
It really highlights how stillness can be a tool for seeing what others don't, for thinking differently, for making better decisions under pressure.
It echoes that Stoic idea from the January 4th entry in the Daily Stoic True Invincibility comes from not being upset by things outside our control. By cultivating stillness, we become less reactive to those external forces and more capable of choosing our responses wisely.
Which brings us to another high-stakes example. The Cuban Missile Crisis, JFK facing the potential for nuclear war, had to resist intense pressure to react impulsively. Can you imagine the weight of the world on his shoulders?
What's remarkable is that JFK, known for being quite impulsive, managed to tap into a level of stillness during that incredibly tense period. Holiday points out that Kennedy's family motto was, "Don't get mad, get even." Yet during the Cuban Missile Crisis, he had to transcend that ingrained response.
It seems he had to access a deeper level of stillness to make the right call for not just his country, but for the entire world.
Exactly. It wasn't just about standing firm against the Soviets. It was about mastering his own thinking and the thinking of those around him. That's where true leadership emerges, from the stillness within.
And it ties in perfectly with that Stoic wisdom from the January 13th entry. We can't control what other nations do, but we can control how we respond. That's a powerful lesson for us all, whether we're facing a global crisis or just a tough day at the office.
It's a reminder that stillness isn't about passivity. It's about choosing our battles and responding with clarity rather than reacting impulsively.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, let's explore how stillness impacts our presence. Holiday uses the fascinating example of Marina Abramovich's performance. The artist is present. Have you ever heard of this?
It's an incredible feat of mental and physical endurance. For months, Abramovich sat silently in a chair at MoMA, inviting strangers to sit opposite her and share a moment of presence.
Hour after hour, day after day, she had that space with unwavering focus, captivating audiences with her stillness. It's amazing to think that people waited in line for hours just to experience that shared presence with her.
What was it about her stillness that created such a powerful experience for people? It's interesting how her stillness created a space for others to become more present themselves. People reported feeling deeply seen and connected, almost like Abramovich's stillness was a mirror reflecting their own inner lives. Even the slightest distraction on her part would have shattered that delicate connection. Her unwavering focus, her commitment to being fully present in that moment allowed others to tap into their own presence.
This makes me think about those moments when I'm completely absorbed in an activity like playing music or writing, and all sense of time disappears. It's like entering a different state of consciousness. Have you ever felt that?
Absolutely. And it's a state that many artists, athletes, and performers actively cultivate. It's about quieting the mind, letting go of distractions, and becoming fully immersed in the present moment.
And this idea of presence is something that the Daily Stoic emphasizes throughout January, particularly the 17th entry. It's all about mindfulness and resisting distractions, isn't it?
Exactly. We often get caught up in worries about the future or regrets about the past, and in doing so, we miss out on the richness of the present moment. Cultivating stillness allows us to step off that mental treadmill and engage with the world around us more fully.
It's about becoming more like an artist, observing the subtle details and fleeting beauty that we might otherwise miss.
It's a skill that can be applied to anything, not just art. Imagine bringing that level of focus and attention to your work, your relationships, your everyday interactions. It's about choosing presence over distraction awareness over autopilot.
Okay, so we've seen how stillness can enhance decision-making and deepen our presence. But what about its impact on performance? Holiday tells a fascinating story about baseball player Shawn Green, who used Buddhist principles to overcome a major slump. He was in a terrible rut, couldn't hit anything, and the harder he tried, the worse it got.
That feeling of pressure and desperation when things aren't going our way is something we can all relate to. We've all experienced that sense of being stuck, of our efforts backfiring.
But instead of trying to force his way out of the slump, Green focused on clearing his mind completely. He decided to stop fighting it and embrace stillness.
It's counterintuitive, isn't it, that sometimes letting go is the most powerful way to gain control. And for Green, that meant finding stillness amidst the chaos of a professional baseball game.
And you know what? He ended up hitting 4 home runs in a single game. It's a remarkable example of how stillness can unlock peak performance.
This concept is beautifully illustrated by the idea of the void, which Holiday explores in the book. It's this idea that by emptying the mind, we create space for something new to emerge. Think of a pitcher full of rocks. You can't pour anything new into it until you remove those rocks.
So by cultivating stillness, we remove those mental blocks, the doubts, the fears, the distractions, and create space for inspiration, creativity, and peak performance to flow.
It's about recognizing that sometimes our efforts to force things can actually get in the way. By cultivating stillness, we create the space for something new, something better to emerge.
It reminds me of Tiger Woods' 2008 U.S. Open win, where he played through incredible pain with unbelievable focus and poise. He literally won the tournament on a broken leg.
That's an incredible testament to the power of stillness under pressure. Despite the agony he was experiencing, Woods managed to stay present, stay focused on the task at hand, and achieve something extraordinary. It's a powerful reminder that we can often accomplish far more than we think we're capable of when we tap into that inner stillness.
It's clear that stillness can help us push past our perceived limitations and achieve a level of performance we never thought possible.
And this resonates with a key Stoic principle, not letting external factors dictate our internal state. Whether we're facing a high-pressure game, a challenging project, or just a difficult day, stillness allows us to rise above those external pressures and perform at our best. It's about finding that inner strength and resilience to navigate whatever life throws our way.
Okay, so we've seen how stillness can empower us to make better decisions, be more present, and achieve peak performance. But what about its impact on our inner peace?
This is where the deeper, more spiritual aspects of stillness come into play. Holiday highlights how stillness helps us develop a strong moral compass, cultivate a sense of connection with something bigger than ourselves, and find contentment with what we have.
This aligns beautifully with the Daily Stoic's reflections on meaning and purpose in life, especially the entries for May 31st and June 7th. It's about connecting to something larger than ourselves, finding a guiding principle that shapes our actions and choices.
For the Stoics, that guiding principle was virtue. They believed that living a virtuous life, a life of integrity and self-control, was the path to true happiness. It's about choosing to act in accordance with our values, even when it's difficult.
This makes me wonder how often we're tempted to take shortcuts to compromise our values for convenience or personal gain. But those choices rarely lead to lasting peace, do they?
Often they lead to guilt, regret, and inner turmoil. It's in those moments of quiet reflection in the stillness that we can reconnect with our values and course correct.
Holiday also emphasizes the importance of relationships, love, and community for finding stillness.
This is a crucial point. We are social creatures, and our connections with others have a profound impact on our well-being. The Daily Stoic echoes this sentiment, particularly in the entries for June 7th and July 17th, encouraging us to seek out mentors, build strong relationships, and find solace and support in our communities.
It's about recognizing that we're not meant to go through life alone. We can lean on each other, share our burdens, and find strength in our shared humanity.
Now, Holiday also cautions us about the pitfalls of unchecked ambition and the relentless pursuit of more. In today's world, we're constantly bombarded with messages about what we lack, what we need to buy, achieve, or become. It's easy to lose sight of the simple beauty of enough.
This resonates with a powerful entry in the Daily Stoic, where Marcus Aurelius reminds us that all we truly need is the present moment. Happiness isn't something we find in the future. It's something we cultivate right here, right now.
It's about shifting our focus from what we're striving for to what we already have, appreciating the abundance that already exists in our lives, cultivating a sense of gratitude and contentment, finding joy in the simple things.
That relentless pursuit of more can be so exhausting, keeping us on a treadmill of striving and reaching without ever truly arriving.
Exactly. And the irony is that the more we chase after happiness, the further it seems to elude us. It disrupts our stillness, keeps us in a state of perpetual anxiety and dissatisfaction.
So how do we break free from that cycle? How do we cultivate that elusive sense of contentment?
The Daily Stoic offers some valuable guidance. One recurring theme is the importance of focusing on what's within our control. We can't control external events, other people's opinions, or the ups and downs of life. But we can control our own thoughts, reactions, and choices.
It's about recognizing that true freedom lies not in controlling the world around us, but in mastering our own inner world.
And that's where the practical techniques for cultivating stillness come in. Journaling, seeking solitude, establishing routines, finding joy in leisure. These are all tools we can use to create space for stillness in our lives, to reconnect with our inner peace, and to navigate life's challenges with greater clarity and resilience.
It's about taking ownership of our own well-being and making choices that support our mental, emotional, and spiritual health.
And as we delve deeper into these practical techniques, I'd love to share a personal anecdote that really highlights their transformative power.
I'm all ears.
A few years ago, I was going through a particularly challenging time. Work was demanding, my personal life was in flux, and I felt constantly overwhelmed. It was like being caught in a whirlwind, unable to find my footing. My mind was racing with worries, and I couldn't seem to find a moment of peace.
I think many of us can relate to that feeling of being swept up in the chaos, of losing that sense of inner calm.
It's an all too common experience in today's fast-paced world, and I knew I needed to find a way to calm the storm within, to reconnect with that inner stillness that I had lost touch with.
So how did you go about doing that? What steps did you take to reclaim that stillness? Oh, it sounds like you were really struggling. What did you do to pull yourself out of that state?
I started by incorporating some of the techniques we've been discussing, into my daily routine. Each morning, I'd begin with journaling. It became a safe space to pour out my thoughts and emotions to try and identify the root causes of my stress. It also helped me shift my focus to what I was grateful for, reminding myself of the good things in my life.
It's amazing how powerful that simple act of journaling can be. It's like creating a mental snapshot of where you are, allowing you to process things more clearly.
It really is. And alongside that, I consciously created more space for solitude and silence. I started taking walks in nature, just being present with the trees and the sky. I'd meditate for a few minutes each day, even if it was just focusing on my breath. And I made a real effort to unplug from technology, to step away from that constant influx of information that was overloading my mind.
Those are all great strategies for creating a mental sanctuary, a space to reconnect with that inner stillness. It's something we often neglect in our always connected world.
It's easy to get swept up in the busyness, to feel like we constantly need to be on, but creating that space for stillness, even if it's just for a few minutes each day, can be incredibly restorative.
Did you find that carving out that time for stillness affected other areas of your life as well?
Absolutely. Alongside those practices, I made sure to prioritize activities that brought me joy and helped me recharge, reading, listening to music, spending quality time with loved ones. I realized these weren't just indulgences, they were essential for my well-being.
It's about giving ourselves permission to simply be, to enjoy the things that nourish our souls.
Exactly. And as I integrated these practices into my life, a gradual shift began to happen. That sense of calm and clarity started to return. My mind felt less cluttered, less burdened by anxieties. I started to see my challenges with fresh perspective, and I felt more resilient in facing them.
It's like you were clearing out the mental clutter, making space for peace and clarity to emerge.
That's a perfect analogy. And what's interesting is that this newfound stillness didn't make me passive or withdrawn. If anything, it empowered me to act with more purpose and intention. I was able to focus my energy where it truly mattered, to make decisions with more confidence, and to navigate tricky situations with a greater sense of calm.
So the stillness became a source of strength, not weakness. It's like it provided a solid foundation from which you could move forward with more clarity and intention.
That's exactly it. It wasn't about escaping from the world, but about engaging with it from a more grounded and centered place. And this brings me to a crucial point. Cultivating stillness is a lifelong journey, not a destination. It's not a switch you flip. It's something you practice and refine over time.
It's like learning any new skill, playing an instrument, mastering a sport. It takes dedication, patience, and a willingness to embrace the process.
And there will be days when we falter, when the chaos of life creeps back in, when our minds get caught up in worries and distractions. The key is to keep coming back to those practices that reconnect us with our inner stillness, to keep returning to that quiet space within where peace and clarity reside.
It's about recognizing that life is a constant ebb and flow. There will be storms, but we have the power to find our center and weather them with grace and resilience.
This leads me to a final thought about stillness, and it's perhaps the most important one. Cultivating stillness isn't just about personal transformation. It's about contributing to a more peaceful and harmonious world.
That's a powerful idea. I'm curious to hear how you see that connection.
When we cultivate stillness within ourselves, we naturally become less reactive, less judgmental, and more compassionate towards others.
It's like a ripple effect.
Hold on.
The peace we create within radiates outwards, influencing those around us and contributing to a more harmonious collective.
Exactly. And when we approach our interactions with others from a place of stillness, we're more likely to truly listen, to empathize with their perspective, and to find common ground even when there are disagreements.
It's about creating space for genuine understanding and connection, even amidst differing viewpoints.
And when we act in the world from a place of stillness, we're more likely to make choices that benefit not just ourselves, but the greater good. We're more inclined to support causes that align with our values, to contribute to our communities in meaningful ways, and to work towards a more just and equitable world.
So it's not just about self-improvement, it's about contributing to positive social change. Stillness can be a catalyst for making the world a better place.
Absolutely. Our inner peace is intertwined with the peace of the world. By nurturing our own stillness, we contribute to a more peaceful and harmonious world for everyone.
This has been such an insightful conversation. It seems like stillness is not just a key to personal transformation, but a key to unlocking a more fulfilling and peaceful future for all of us.
Indeed. And I hope this deep dive has ignited your curiosity about the power of stillness and inspired you to explore it further in your own life.
It certainly has for me, and I know our listeners are eager to hear more. Let's take a moment to gather our thoughts, and when we come back, we'll wrap up this deep dive with some final takeaways, and perhaps even a challenge for our listeners to consider. Welcome back to our deep dive into the power of stillness. I feel like we've been on quite a journey.
We have, and it's amazing how these ideas, from centuries ago, still resonate so deeply today. It speaks to something fundamental about the human experience, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So before we wrap up, let's try to distill some key takeaways. What are some actionable insights for our listeners?
The first one that jumps out at me is that stillness isn't just for, monks or mystics. It's a skill, a practice that we can all cultivate. It's about making choices to create that space for reflection, for that inner peace.
It really is like training a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Exactly. And the second takeaway is that stillness is not about becoming passive or retreating from the world. It's actually about finding that inner balance that empowers us to act with purpose, to make choices that are aligned with our values, and to face challenges head on.
It's about being our best selves.
Yeah.
Not just for us, but for the world around us.
Right. And the third takeaway, I think, is the understanding that this is an ongoing journey. It's not like you suddenly achieve perfect stillness. It's a lifelong practice of self-awareness, of reflection and intention.
It's about weathering those storms.
Yeah.
Life throws a lot at us, but we have the power to find that calm within.
And finally, and this is crucial, recognizing the connection between our inner stillness and the peace of the world. By cultivating stillness within, we contribute to a more harmonious world for everyone.
It's like that saying, be the change you want to see. It all starts with us.
So I'd like to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Okay, I'm ready.
I challenge you to identify one area in your life where cultivating stillness could make a difference.
It's a great challenge because it's personal and it's actionable.
Is it in your decision making? Maybe you rush into things or get stuck in overthinking.
Or maybe it's in your relationships, how you communicate, how you handle disagreements.
Or maybe it's at work. Are you feeling overwhelmed, stressed out? Are you struggling to be creative?
Whatever it is, I encourage you to go back to the stories we've discussed, the Stoic principles. Think about what resonated with you and what actions you can take.
Could you try journaling for a few minutes each day or meditation? Maybe create space for silence and solitude.
Could you build a routine that supports your well-being? Make time for activities that bring you joy.
It's not about being perfect.
Yeah.
It's about taking those small steps, those little acts of intention that can lead to big changes.
It's about that ripple effect.
Oh.
The peace we create within can spread outwards, affecting our relationships, our work, our communities.
So ask yourself, what could you achieve with more stillness in your life? What kind of positive change could you create?
That's a great question to ponder. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the power of stillness. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay still.